Once again, welcome to my channel. This is Karthik. Today we try to discuss about the concept called exceptions. So straight away we go for exceptions concept today. See, what is exception? First of all, try to understand exception is an unexpected event that occurs during the program execution. It affects the flow of program instructions, which can cause the program to terminate abnormally. You can even find the same kind of definition in Google. What exactly we can speak exception in real time is whenever an user try to enter invalid input. Say example, a person is asked to enter the age. If person enters the age as a text instead of a numerical value, that is an abnormal kind of event which is not expected, and suddenly a network is being lost. Sometimes a file which you tends to open but is not, it is opening. So it is an unexpected event that occurs during program execution, and program is being executed. It will make the flow of execution of program abnormally terminate. How can we compare exception with an error? See, error is an irrecoverable condition which occurs, we cannot recover from that. For example, a Java virtual machine error, which we need to again reformat the virtual machine, and a memory leakage error, stack overflow error, say an infinite recursion error. All these are the errors which are irrecoverable. These needs the programmer to take control beyond him, and programmer never try to handle these kind of errors because that may lead to abnormal situations. These two are the two important kind of situations that every developer faces in real time. One is exception and the one is error. In this today's concept, we try to focus more on exceptions. These two are of course links to a particular class. There is a kind of hierarchy. The hierarchy is throwable. Under throwable, these two are categorized: exception and error. Throwable is a parent class of both exceptions and errors. The meaning itself says that throwable means the exceptions which are needed to throw from the current situation, those should be thrown with the help of specified classes or APIs. Hence, all exceptions are the subclasses of the throwable class. Example, again the exceptions classified into unchecked exception and checked exception. Unchecked exceptions are the exceptions which are seen at runtime. I can say unchecked exceptions as runtime exceptions in other words, and checked exceptions I can call them as Compiletime exceptions. So exceptions, that is abnormal kind of situation where a user need to handle that. So they may occur during the time of runtime or at compile time. Runtime exceptions never need to be handled, because the exceptions which are seen at runtime will be handled automatically by the JVM. And compile time exceptions are to be handled, because if the exceptions are not handled, that may lead to the program termination. Hence, we have a concept called exception handling. Exception handling mechanism is required in situations where a particular exception is to be handled either at compile time or runtime. Strictly speaking, runtime exceptions need not be handled as JVM look after them, and all compile time exceptions need to be handled, because if we don't handle them, they will lead to program termination. So straight away we'll go with examples to understand what is an exception and what is an unchecked exception, what is a checked exception, what are different exception handling mechanisms strategies are there. We'll see them. I'll take example now, an exception demo. I just show you different kind of exception which we see at runtime. So class exception demo, public static void main string args. So what kind of exceptions can be runtime exceptions? The exceptions which are seen at runtime. The best example I can simply say, if I don't have a main method, say example I remove the main method from here, I just try to compile the program, java c space exception demo.java, it compiles successfully, and java space exception demo. When I run this program, observe that I got an error here at runtime. Main method not found in the class exception demo, please define the main method as. So since I did not create a main method and I am trying to run the program, if the class doesn't contain main method, one should not run the program, instead compile the program. Hence, that is simple exception we have seen at runtime, that is exception in the main. And the few exceptions like we just see now, system dot out dot println, I just try to print some value, say args of 1. I just want to print the value from argument 1. As we all know, this is a command line argument. The argument which I pass from the argument 1 will be printed here. We'll run the program and we'll look which exception can be experienced here. Compile successfully. I'm just trying to run this java space exception demo space 2. See, exception in thread main, that is java dot lang dot array index out of bounds exception, means this is the exception that occurred due to the index position of the array at 1. Since I am trying to expect the first position value to be printed in this particular example, but I did not pass any value at that position. I have passed 0 position, but I did not pass next position value. For example, if I pass a value like this, say 2 space 5, that may not be a big problem, but I didn't pass 5 earlier, so it throws me an array index out of bounds exception. This is an runtime exception. And example, go with another one. I just want to say that integer dot parse int of. I just want to convert this args of 0 value into integer value. Okay. Just again compile the program and run the program. Since it is integer, we may not get any kind of issue. For example, instead of 2, if I pass quotations of 2, it won't be issue, because 2 and quotations of 2 both can be converted into integer. For example, if I pass a value say 2a, 2a is not a proper numerical value and hit enter, that may leads to another kind of exception, that is a number format exception for the input string 2a, because 2a is not an input of type number, hence it throws an exception called number format exception. Number format exception will comes into picture when you're trying to convert a particular string into integer, but that string is not a type of integer. Example, not only this, example, if I say instead of integer I want to say double dot parse double. Again, try to compile this program and double dot in a hurry parse double. Compile the program again and run the program. Say the same kind of concept called number format exception, because I am trying to convert 2a value into the float value, hence it throws me again an exception called number format exception. And the exception we'll see now. Args of 0 dot say example char at of 5. I'm just trying to access now the argument 0 value dot caret. See, caret is a function which retrieves the character position at index 5. At index 5, which character is present, that will be retrieved from that one. This is a string method, and args of 0 is obviously a string, right? So just run and check. Again I compile, no problem. Now run that. See, I am trying to I'll don't do any kind of string here and run this. See, it first throws me exception called again ArrayIndexOutofBounds exception. Okay, for example, if I pass some value here, say the value is something called hell, and hit enter. See, hell is a string of length 4, but I am trying to access the index at fifth position, hence it throws me exception called string index out of bounds exception. Means the exception is raised due to the index position of a string which is expected at position 5. This is something like string index out of bounds exception. This is an array index, because since I did not pass the value at args of 0, that is args of 0 is an array, hence I got array index, and this is an string index. And if you keep on seeing more number of errors, say example, say thread dot example, say thread dot start something, thread dot thread space t equals to new thread and t dot start. I just said a thread to be started once, okay, and run this and no problem, and in compilation run that, there is no problem. Example, if I say the same thread to start for twice, say again t dot start, and again run the program, compile the program and run it. See, you'll get again a runtime exception saying that illegal thread state exception. Once a thread is started, the thread will go from new to runnable state. Again you are trying to start the same thread which is already been run. Again you are trying to say that a thread to run again, since it is always running. So this may leads to an exception state. This is also one kind of exceptions. And example, take a string str equals to, I have a value of string as null, and just system dot out dot println say str dot to uppercase. I want to convert the string into uppercase. Okay, once try to compile this program, and there is some kind of problem saying that okay, to uppercase, the U is to be capital letter. Sorry. Again, compile that, no problem. Run that. You get exception here, that is null pointer exception, because I am trying to access the null value. Since the str doesn't have any kind of value in it, so it throws a null pointer exception, because trying to access a null value may leads to a null pointer exception. Likewise, we have multiple number of classes. All these classes comes under runtime exceptions. What we have seen: array index out of bounds exception. We have seen string index out of bounds exception, null pointer exception, number format exception, illegal thread state exception, etc. We have n number of runtime exceptions we can find. All the exceptions which are seen at runtime, and if you observe properly, all the exceptions are being thrown at runtime, and no user is trying to throw them. All the exceptions are thrown by JVM automatically. But why we need to handle runtime exceptions? See, the runtime exceptions need to be handled in situations where a user unable to understand the exception. For example, if we go to real time, somebody asks to enter an age. Please enter the age in a text box. So when user enters age like this, say age is 30 years, then obviously that may not be validated, because generally the system will expect the age in terms of numerical value. But a person who entered the age in the string format, immediately it throws an error as number format exception. A person who is non-technical cannot understand what is number format exception. Immediately he type in Google, what is number format exception, what should I replace here, if he has knowledge. Even when you type, you won't understand why this error is occurred. So in order to overcome this user related errors, user educating errors, because runtime errors by default they throw exceptions. If you want to modify the messages that was being passed by runtime exceptions, then all runtime exceptions even need the exception handlers. So exception handlers are required in that situations, and all the runtime exceptions are the children of a class called RuntimeException class. This is a package from java.lang. And who is the parent of this? java.lang.exception. Who is the parent of this? java.lang.throwable. So this is a hierarchy of exceptions. The root of all exceptions is throwable. The child is exception, and the child of exception is runtime exception. Means all the runtime exceptions will come under the hierarchy of what? Runtime exceptions. Example, till now what I have said, say array index out of bounds exception, string index out of bound exceptions, say null pointer exception, number format exception. So all these exceptions comes under runtime exception. As we earlier classified, exceptions are classified into two categories: compile time exceptions and runtime exceptions. So all the runtime exceptions comes under the exception, runtime exception class. Obviously, this always comes with under exception, and there is no such class like java.lang.compiletime exception. Mind you, there is no such class available, but the exceptions which are seen at compile time will be comes under the exception class directly. I just show you what are called compile time exceptions now to understand easily. So compile time exceptions are the exceptions which are seen at compile time. Means if we don't handle them, that obviously will leads to an compile time errors. Once example, say I want to make the thread to sleep for say 5 seconds. The meaning of this statement is I want to pause this particular execution of program for 5 seconds. After 5 seconds, I just want to print something, say hello, I am there. When I compile the program, observe this, what happens. Immediately we got a compile time error here stating that unreported exception, that is interrupted exception, must be caught or declared to be thrown. The meaning of the statement is, in order to run this particular statement called thread.sleep, I should need to throw an exception called as interrupted exception. If I don't throw this exception, then this will lead to an termination of the program. That's why we got a compile time error. If this error is not handled, then the program will be terminated. Hence, how to handle? We'll see this. This is something like a compile time error. And likewise, we have so many number of things. Say example, if I say that I just want to load a class dynamically, say class dot for name of, I just want to load a class here, say in the class name as say java.lang.string example. Again, compile the program. You can observe again same kind of exception. Again, unreported exception called class not found exception. The meaning of that statement is, the class which you have loaded, see this statement meaning is that I want to load a class dynamically. To use this class, I want to load that class. To load the class, I use the for name method from a class. When I'm trying to load this class, since we already know this class is available, but the Java virtual machine will say that this class should throw exception called class not found. Means if this particular class is not available, then it will throw exception that this class is not available. Example, say java.lang.kartik. Fortunately, we know that this class is not available. But when I try to compile this program, they should automatically say me that this class is not present in this library. Hence, I should need to throw exception called class not found exception. Likewise, we have a lot many things. Say example, I just want to read a file. Say file input stream space or object equal to new file input stream of, I want to read a file. For example, from my D drive, I just want to read a file, say java.text file. Okay, to use this particular class, I should need to import a package here generally. that is import java.io.star package. So when I try to compile the program again, look at you'll find some exception again, that is an unreported exception, that is file not found exception. It must be caught or declared to be thrown. If you don't handle this particular line with an exception called file not found, because if this file is not available, then obviously this exception will be thrown. So these are all called the compile time exceptions, the exceptions which are to be handled at compile time only. If you don't handle them, then obviously they will throw an error called unreported exception, the exception name. Hence all the exceptions comes under what? An exception class. So exception is a parent class, and below to that the exceptions will come. Once the exception is interrupted exception, we have different exceptions in real time. Interrupted exception, file input stream, and say class not found exception. If you keep on moving, we have something like IO exception, so on. So this all comes under again the parent class called java.lang.exception, and this comes under java.lang, and sorry, I wrote something wrong one here, file not found exception, sorry. So java.io package, and this is java.lang again, and java.io again. All these are exceptions that are compile time exceptions, which are the subclasses of exception class. Below to that, we also have another one called java.lang.runtime exception, and below runtime exception we have the exceptions like java.lang. As we discussed earlier, null pointer exception, and java.lang. number format exception, etc. So this is one hierarchy, this is another hierarchy. All these exceptions comes under one exception class. All these comes under an runtime exception class. Of course, runtime exception class again comes under exception, and the superclass of all these guys is java.lang.throwable. So throwable is a superclass of all exceptions. So this is a simple kind of demo we have given. What is an exception, how exceptions are classified, what are compile time exceptions, what are runtime exceptions, and where the runtime exceptions are seen, where the compile time exceptions are seen. And in the next video we'll try to work on how these exceptions are handled. Thank you very much for patiently listening. Keep enjoying.